Gobble, gobble, you've reached the Turkey Helpline. I'm a 20-year veteran of the Turkey Helpline. We're an elite group of turkey cooking experts, or Turkologists, as we're more commonly known. There are 43 of us, 3 are men, and our oldest volunteer is 94, and our resident expert on stovepipe ovens. We work a full 12-hour day, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. The job consists of helping people who are in the middle of what we call turkey trauma. Breathe with me. Yeah, they're not going to starve. It's an overcooked bird, not your wedding cake. Lots of newlyweds. You've prepped nothing and you need it done in 2 hours. Okay, let's buckle down. We've got serious thawing work to do. How big is your bathtub? Jason, is the oven turned on? They always turn themselves off, don't they? Yep, you will have to stick your hand fully into the bird to retrieve the neck and organs. Sir, it's totally normal to feel queasy. No, don't take the phone into the bathroom. Okay, all right. I gargle turkey soup to keep the vocal cords loose. It's not a home remedy. I'm just addicted to sodium. In-laws and your parents? Oh, sure, we can do that right now. Heavenly Father. Jennifer, I know spatchcock sounds scary, but it's just the turkey doing a little bit of yoga. Now grab those shears. Oh, Friendsgiving. I love that that's a thing now. Where's my invite? No, we have not actually met. Mom? Mom, do you need help with a turkey? Okay, well, I've told you you can only call here if you have a turkey problem. Is it sliced or ground? I will see her at Christmas and not a moment before. It's an intense 12 hours, but every year there's that one phone call the Lord uses to bring everything into focus. You have a great Thanksgiving Day too, dear. Bye-bye now. You too, drive safe. Happy Thanksgiving. You too. Turkey Helpline. Hi, Barry. I'm Gloria. First time, huh? Your wife taking the year off, is she? Oh. I'm so sorry to hear that. Well, I've got you, Barry. We can walk through it together. Not at all. I've got all the time in the world. Have you got butter? Thanksgiving is a time to celebrate triumphs and bounty and blessings and surprising encounters. 52 years. My goodness. Yep, just shove the butter right under the skin. It's a time to reflect on the richness God puts in our lives, no matter what circumstances we find ourselves in. Whatever the case, it's a day to stop and give thanks to a God that loves us deeply. That's why it's my favorite time of year. Yep, they probably should say to take the plastic wrap off the turkey before putting it in the oven. Unfortunately, I see takeout in your future, Beth.
Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving. Glad that you could be here with us, joining us in worship today. Open your Bibles with me to Luke chapter 14 this morning. We're continuing in our series. We're calling it Relentless, where we're taking a deeper dive into our mission, what it means to relentlessly pursue an authentic relationship with Jesus, with one another, and our community. So if you catch anything in this series, it's our hope as leaders here at Woodcrest that you would hear the word authentic, that you would hear it in a fresh way, because it's been indirectly a word that has described Woodcrest for years, if not decades. It's painted as you come in these doors. It's painted over the worship center. Real God, real people, real transformation. That all came from the old saying that we used to, say back in the day. Hey, get real, right? The intent has always been to communicate Christianity not as a religion, but a very real relationship with God. And in order to have that real relationship with God, you have to be real. And you have to be real with those who are around you. The challenge is that anytime these kind of sayings and these kind of slogans get put into place, and if they're up long enough, we don't hear them anymore. We may not even see the words on church signs anymore, and it's too easy to forget really what it's all about. And in reality, the same could be said of this new mission statement, all the work that we've done on a mission frame of values and strategy and mission. The same thing could be said. All this work, and we've worked hard, make it simple, make it clear, easy to remember, but they're just words. We don't know what it means to live them out. So take this word, authentic. I mean, yeah, what does that really mean? That could describe maybe your general attitude in life, or it can describe Briano's pizza over by my house. Authentic, right? Old world ingredients, made from scratch for your enjoyment. But here at Woodcrest, we're not just using that word to describe family meals around here, although Denny and Connie do a great job making homemade meals for us, fantastic. But rather, we're using this to describe you. Who is the real you? And do you have anyone to share that real you with? So why? So that we can know each other authentically in very real ways. And here's the challenge that I have for you. Because of this digital world we live in and how much time we spend on those kind of digital relationships, the question is, does anyone really know you? Or maybe the question is, do you truly even know yourself? And there's all kinds of ways, trust me, to press into this authenticity. There's all kinds of things that get in the way of us truly being authentic with one another. And just so you know, God is really working on my heart around this. And so today's message, I just want you to know, it's going to cause you to think, but I want you to know it comes out of deep conviction that God has put on my heart in my life. Because here's what happens in life. Because of maybe how we are raised, because of failures in the past, or even successes, because of fear and shame, we put up walls. Authentic, I don't know. What would people say if they really knew the real me? But here's what I know. For Woodcrest to really lean into this mission that we're talking about, to relentlessly pursue authentic relationships with Jesus and with one another, and that's been stated for decades around here. For us to press into that, there's a wall up. And it's the wall of pride. Because pride is the biggest wall that all of us face for a church to truly be authentic and real. To be a church that I believe Jesus wants us to be. So as we look at all this work that I've been talking on this for 10 weeks now. And if we're to clearly step into that, here's the key to authenticity. It's humility. That's the key. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. Before I get into all that, I don't know if you guys heard the news about David Jeremiah this week. Anyone hear the news about him? My son lives in San Diego. He called me to tell me about it. Anyway, if you don't know him, he's a well-known pastor, great Bible teacher. He's an author. He's from that San Diego area. Many of you have read his books, heard him preach. Well, he was on a private plane this week with Tom Cruise and Elon Musk and a Boy Scout who was getting some national attention for this honor he received for being an Eagle Scout. And about an hour into the flight, the plane experienced some engine failure and began to dive. And Tom Cruise, who was, he's a pilot, he was piloting the flight, he said, "Put on the chutes. We're going to have to jump." Well, there was 4 of them. They looked around, there's only 3 chutes. And Tom quickly put one on and said, "Hey, I can't die now. I'm filming Mission Impossible 55 right now. It's coming out next summer. I got to finish." Elon Musk says, "Well, the world needs me. After all, I plan on going to Mars," so he jumped. And well, Pastor David Jeremiah, he looked at the young Eagle Scout and he said humbly, "Listen, I've lived a full life. I did what God asked me to do. You take the last parachute, for you have your whole life in front of you. Well, the Eagle Scout, he was a smart kid. He was trained to observe everything around him. He said, thank you so much, Pastor, but Pastor, we're going to be okay. Mr. Musk was in such a hurry, he grabbed my backpack and jumped out of the plane. Pride will take us down. So over and over again, we hear in Jesus' teaching, it's loudly proclaimed about humility. So today, we're going to hear what Jesus has to say about humility. And humility is one of those things, just a little indicator here, that I think most of us think we have. But it's so much harder to live out. So today from a parable, a teaching that Jesus taught, it's going to be real easy. It's simple. It's going to be simple to understand what it's all about. It's super clear. It's super understandable. And that's why from his teaching, I have 7 implications that I've formed into questions. Because you're going to get it up here. You're going to get the teaching. Oh, Pastor, that's easy. I got it. Well, I'm going to ask you 7 questions to see if you got it. 7 questions that I'm asking myself right now in this stage of my life and ministry that I hope would get at your hearts today. And by the way, not only are these 7 questions going to be great for Woodcrest to answer in our life here, trust me, if you can answer these 7 questions, allow God to deal with them on your heart, you're going to have a better Thanksgiving day with your family. You're going to have a better holiday season. You get that for free today. So, before I get into it, let's jump into the background of this text in Luke chapter 14. You can follow along in the first few verses as I described it. So, Jesus gets invited over to somebody's home, a religious leader's home. It was for a midday dinner, you could say, after Sunday dinner. It was after the Sabbath. And the host of this religious sect was someone from a group called the Pharisees. And the Pharisees were known. They kept every little detail of the law. It had to be kept. And so, here's what's going on. They didn't invite Jesus over because they were good friends with Jesus. They invited him over because they wanted to trap him into breaking one of the laws. And you might say, well, how would they trap him? Well, they also invited a man who was sick with what we would call today dropsy, or we might call it edema, meaning that the body was filled with excessive fluid, probably because there was fluid around their heart. So we need to understand the culture a little bit back then to really get at this story. Normally, a Pharisee would never, ever, ever, ever invite somebody over who had a disease like that. They just wouldn't do it. He could have been oozing the bodily fluid. The other guests would have been offended at how this guest looked. So a person, even with that disease, may even be considered unclean, unworthy, one of the untouchables. But they wanted to see, would Jesus heal a man on the Sabbath? Could we trap him into doing this? So the setup is very interesting here if you look at it. In their minds, right, here's what they did. They actually broke the law in order to trap a man to break the law. They broke the little law that said, hey, you can't hang out with somebody who's oozing bodily fluids, but okay, we're going to go ahead and break that law so we can see if we can trap Jesus with this law. So Jesus knows what they're up to. And he says this, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not? And then he reached out and he healed the man. And then it says, he sent the man on his way. Now, in the original language here, if you do a little study around it, it says, literally, he released him and he set him free. Which makes sense because then Jesus says in verse 5, which one of you, having a son or an ox that has fallen into a well on a Sabbath, would not immediately pull them out, would not immediately set them free? Because the law in Deuteronomy commanded you. That ox fell in the pit, he was on the Sabbath, you're to pull it out. Jesus is implying here, who's more important, the ox or a fellow man? Now, there's also more going on here culturally with the Pharisee and with Jesus. It's not just about the Sabbath. And so right now, Jesus is going to call him on it. And so he tells him this parable. So here's a little setup so you understand the parable or the teaching. At any dinner party back then, or a wedding feast, the greater your status was, the greater you sat next to the host. So this was a very literal, visually seen popularity contest. So if you were invited then as a guest to a dinner party like that, you never showed up early. You never showed up so you could just show up early and take your seat, because if you thought how your relationship was with the host, you might guess wrong. There might be more important than even you. So if you came too early and sat too close, you would get moved back. Somebody else would get put into your seat. So we really don't have anything like that today. You can think of maybe, sporting events, those on a basketball court who sit on the floor, or maybe those you watch an award show and they have certain celebrities sitting real close to the stage. But very often, for instance, in the sporting world, you have to buy those primo seats. So I remember going to, it was a Bucks game. It was years ago. It was in Milwaukee. Friend got tickets, whatever. And it was just a few rows up from the floor. It wasn't on the floor, but it was a few rows up from the floor. And I remember going there, and I'm just this young punk pastor from small town Wisconsin, and I get there and I take my seat, and it does not take me all but a moment to look around, and I'm sitting with the beautiful people. Because this lady next to me has this wedding ring on where the rock is the size of a dime. And I'm going, okay, this is where I am now. So we don't really have anything like that. Maybe weddings today, those who sit at the head table, those friends and family who are close to the bride and groom, maybe that gets at it a little bit. But here Jesus is at this dinner party, and the culture had already kicked in, and the seating arrangement had already took place. And the important teachers of the law were probably really seated close to the host, but this guy, I guarantee you, this guy who was sick, he was probably seated in the back of the table, if not at all. Because Jesus healed him and then let him go. So let's pick it up. That's the setup. Luke chapter 14, starting in verse 7. When Jesus noticed that all who had come to the dinner were trying to sit in the seats of honor near the head of the table, he gave them this advice. When you're invited to a wedding feast, don't sit in the seat of honor. One of someone who is more distinguished than you has also been invited. The host will come and say, give this person your seat. Then you'll be embarrassed and you'll have to take whatever seat is left at the foot of the table. Instead, take the lowest place at the foot of the table. For when the host sees you, he will come and say, friend, we have a better place for you. Then you'll be honored in front of all the other guests. Here it is in verse 11. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Like I said, pretty straightforward, right? We get it. You could summarize it in Jesus' own words. The first will be last, and the last will be first. It's all about checking our egos at the door. It's all about pride versus humility. And when it comes to wanting to hang out with those important people who we want to be seen with, the things we do, the positions we put ourselves in to self-promote. Now, on the surface, because this is all a great, humble group of people, right? On the surface, we would say, that's Pastor John, that's not me. I don't live my life that way at all. I don't have to hang out with the muckety-mucks. Side note, have you ever heard that term, muckety-mucks? Yeah, you heard that? Okay. It means, if you haven't heard that, somebody who thinks, they are all big and important. So just so you know, the origin of that word was around food, and especially whale meat. So someone who was a muck-a-muck meant that they had a lot of food. And if you had a lot of food back then, you were considered the big cheese. That was all for free today. You got that all for free. Just a little bit of knowledge that really won't get you anywhere. But I think of that, and most of us would say, no, Pastor John, that doesn't describe who I am. Now, there's a lot of people that I know that describes, and I wish they were with me in church today, but that's not me. Here's my encouragement to you. Before we do that, remember that Jesus' teachings, in the form of his teachings and stories and parables, were always meant to get at the heart. Your heart. And my heart. So that's why there's 7 implications from this text that I have 7 questions around. I'm just going to ask you the questions. They're very practical. I hope you can remember them. Here's the first one. 7 questions to consider. Do I go out of my way to be called up front? Now this question seems obvious, right? But so was Jesus' story. The guests in Jesus' story would have been familiar with Proverbs 25. Don't demand an audience with the king or push for a place among the great. It's better to wait for an invitation to the head of the table than to be sent away in public disgrace. They would have known that. Jesus' teaching would have made common sense. They would have agreed with it all. Now, here's the thing. In relation to that proverb, can you and I demand an audience with the president? Or anybody that we think is that important? Okay, let's step back from that, just that question, and ask this. How much in my life and in your life do I go out of my way to be called up front? And many in America would say, no, I don't want that because we're all stage fright, right? But how many of us, when you hear that word up front, think of it this way. How many of us want to be noticed? How many of us want to be recognized for who we are and what we do? How many of us think that we are so important that our story needs to be heard? Just play that out. Even if you're a young mom. And let's say you're in this young moms group. And in this young moms group, after you've been there for a year or so, they're giving out an award for the best mom. So somebody else, not you, gets called up front. What do we instantly do? I'm comparing myself to that mom. Well, my kids are better than their kids. Well, if they had my life, if they knew how hard my life was, I would be getting the award. And so maybe it's not you, but it's your kids. And it's they were in the play, or they were in Little League, or they were in whatever. And so you go through the season, it's a great season, all the kids have fun, and all of a sudden it's an award. And they have it from MVP, best offensive player, best defensive player, hardest worker, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they call all these kids up front, and your kids doesn't get called up front. Wow, my kid should be noticed. They should be seen. They do equally as good. Sure, they're not the best athlete, but they try the hardest. They have the best attitude. And that's why we give blue ribbons to all the kids these days. Think about it. That's why we do, because my kid deserves to be noticed. My child deserves to be seen. And there may be many, many more. This spotlight, when you're presenting your story, you feel like you deserve to give your story to your boss. You need to share your truths with this person. You need to tell it. Matter of fact, I'm watching someone speak. I'm watching Pastor John right now speak, and I think I could do a better job. This stuff goes through our minds. Check your heart, because why? I want to be noticed. My opinions need to be heard. Why can't I? Inside of us is this burning desire to be seen, to be recognized, to be noticed. Something screams that out. That's what Jesus is talking about here. Second check on humility is this. Do I get caught up in this term that you've heard me say now and then, celebrityism? It's a cultural phenomenon. We live in a culture of celebrities. We live in a culture of putting the people that we admire or who perform well in our lives up on a pedestal. And then what we do is we position ourselves to be near the popular. I mean, how big a deal would it be for you to meet Justin Jefferson or J.J. McCarthy? Or Love, for that matter. You're a Packer fan. And you say, oh, I don't care about that. Okay, who's your favorite politician? And when you go to a parade or you go to a gathering, and let's say you got invited to a meal with that favorite politician, would you have to shake their hand? Would you want it to be noticed? What would you do? How great would you feel if that politician wanted to know your opinion on something? Have you ever had those daydreams? Oh, if only they would ask me. I would share with them how the country should be run. Or it's a TV singer, a TV star or singer. Why do you think they have backstage passes? You can buy a backstage pass because I feel better about myself. I get to be with them. I get to hang out with them. Now you say, okay, no, that's not me. I'm not that, I'm not that way. Okay, think of it this way. What if Billy Graham was still alive? Would you really want to meet him? What about that big name pastor, let's say David Jeremiah or Max Lucado or Francis Chan, whoever that is, to have a chance to visit with them, to talk with them. Oh, if they could just pray over me. So play that out. Let's play this out. Let's say it's a political year and there's a big election and there's a parade and our favorite politician, whoever that is, comes in and we're there. We're positioning ourselves. We're trying to move ourselves in front of the line because we're told maybe the motorcade will stop and then maybe, just maybe, they'll shake my hand. Okay, why do we feel so compelled to do that when maybe 4 rows back there's an elderly woman in a wheelchair? Why would we want to shake this person's hand and not the woman in the wheelchair? Would we seek in that crowd, welcoming the politician, someone who has eczema all over their neck and maybe you could see it on their sleeve, would we want to shake their hand? That's what was happening right here at this dinner party for Jesus. I mean, how many commercials do we have to watch about clear skin? I mean, they run them all day. Why? Because no one wants to be considered like this man was, an outcast in their community. Nobody wants that. Are you seeing what's going on at Jesus' dinner party? And in the church, we do the same thing. In the church, we play favorites. Paul had to address it right away in the very early church, in the church of Corinth. For some members of Chloe's household have told me about your quarrels, my dear brothers and sisters. Some of you are saying, I am a follower of Paul, I am a follower of Apollos, or I follow Peter, or I only follow Christ. Nothing has changed. It's happening today, all the time. And James, he writes this to the church leaders, my dear brothers and sisters, how can you claim to have faith in our glorious Lord Jesus if you favor some people over others? And to be honest, that hits us really, really close. Because what if somebody really popular, we all notice, walked in at church? What would we do? Oh, so-and-so is in church today. You see that? And word would spread, and pretty soon there'd just be this crowd, and everyone would look, compared to just an everyday visitor that would come in. I'll never forget what my boss told me. It was the first year I was working for the grand opening of Mall America. I know that dates me. I apologize, but yeah, I was there. And celebrities would come in all the time. They would come in all the time, checking it out, investment opportunities or whatever. You know, I remember Arnold Schwarzenegger came and David Copperfield. I actually had a chance to talk to him briefly, but that's another story. And, you know, I was young, and all this excitement of all the celebrities coming. And I found myself, the offices for the major managers were in the basement of Mall of America. And I found myself, you know, all this hubbub was going on upstairs in the park, going downstairs, talking to the manager, the ops manager at the time. And I was talking about, oh, so-and-so and so-and-so's in the park. Doesn't that excite you? You know? He goes, no. He says, I could care less. Because they're comped for everything. They don't pay for anything. They don't do anything. They don't mean anything to him. We get caught up in it. Our culture, it's crazy. Is it happening in your church? Okay, third question. Ask yourself. Remember, this is all around humility versus pride. Do I constantly check my likes? Now this, I'm gonna hit you close to home here. Am I looking for my own self-promotion? No, Pastor John, of course not. No way. Then why do I care how many people like my social media responses? Why do I constantly check that? Who's responding? Who's liking? I wonder how many likes this gets. Oh, that only got 4 likes. I better come up with something better. Why am I always taking selfies? Why don't you take a selfie right when you get up, right first thing in the morning? Bedhead, everything. Hey, everybody, have a great day. Never seen it. Why don't we do that? We want to look our best. We want to put out our best, and we take pictures of our kids when they're their best. We self-promote all the time. Look at me. Look at my new ride. Look at my dog. Look at this breakfast I made this morning. It's beautiful. Send it out. Look what my kid did. Look what my grandkids did. Now, just hold on a minute here. I'm not saying, I think parents need to, you can call it brag on their kids and grandkids. I think that's awesome. They need to see their value. I get all of that. But check your heart on it. Are you promoting your kids and grandkids or promoting you? Look at what great mom I am. Look at what my kid accomplished. We need to honor others. We need to honor our spouses. We need to honor our family. We need to honor our parents. That's a biblical thing. We've lost that, but so many times we seek to put up pictures so I get noticed. A good friend of mine whose kids were in sports often told me this: if you have to brag about how well you did, you probably did not do so well. So let your game talk for you. Oh, Pastor, that hurts. Everyone in the room could use conviction. I experienced huge conviction on that this week. So being part of Woodcrest Church, I'm part of the Wooddale Pastors Associates. And if you know of Wooddale Church, people know Wooddale Church, a large church in Eden Prairie that planted all these churches. There's like 30 daughter churches or so. And they have a wonderful Christmas gathering, like seriously nice. I mean, one of the churches puts it on, and we all sit around a table, and the chef comes in, and they bring this great meal out, and it's just, it's all paid for, and Sheree and I got to go. And one of the things we had to do, which I was reminded of as I got there, was everyone goes around and shares a little bit and shares a verse, and I hadn't come up with a verse yet or nothing. And so, being at the table with these pastors, just so you know, I don't know if you know Joel Johnson, pastor of Westwood. That's a large church in Chanhassen. Paul Johnson, pastor of Wood Ridge. That's a large church in Medina. Kyle Robinson is the current Wooddale pastor. He's seated there. And then Leith Anderson was at the table. Yeah, so this is, it's going around. John Somerville was there. He just retired as a vice president of Northwestern University. And so, okay, my mind's like, I better come up with something here. Something a little funny, right? Something not about me. So I say, my wife did great. She says her thing, and this is so stupid. This is how dumb I am. We're just going around sharing a memory verse. How you doing? And I'm finding myself getting all worked up about this. I better what? Better look good. I better protect my image. So I got done. Then I found myself thinking all about what I said. How did people respond? And this. And I got home, and I was nervous. Nervous over what? Nothing. Jesus was clear when he taught this in Matthew 6. Watch out, don't do your good deeds publicly to be what? Admired by others. Or you'll lose the reward from your Father in heaven. Fourth question. Do I make sure I get the credit when credit is due? Do you know what I mean? In other words, ask this question. Do you put yourself in the position to make sure the boss knows you did the work? Or do you just get fried when a couple coworkers claim this great project you did and all the work that you did, and they start taking credit for it, and inside you're just burning? So in other words, the question that comes out of that is you live with this identity of life's not fair. I'm not being noticed. Proverbs 27:2, God says, let someone else praise you, not your own mouth, an outsider, and not your own lips. Do I trust God that God ultimately lifts up? That's what Jesus says. Or do I feel that I have to do it myself? One of the things that I see that really, where I notice this the most, it comes down when you see a pro coach and they interview him after the game. And if they win, someone who's just to me like a Tony Dungy type, they win, and what do they do when they win? They give all the credit to the players, all the credit to the other coaches. But if they lose, yeah, that was my fault today. I blew it. Do we model that? Or do I want to be about my glory? Number 5, and I've mentioned this before in church, so I'll quickly go through this again. I'm just trying to get at our hearts here. Do I get angrier at my kids at church than I do at home? Now, you may have yourself in check at church, but inside ask yourself, do I get angrier? So here's a little illustration. Imagine your two boys are out in the front yard or backyard, let's say backyard where no one else can see them, and they're having a rock fight. And they're throwing rocks. And okay, that's not good. Better get them inside, right? That's what goes through your head. Now imagine them having a rock fight right out there where everybody can see them. What goes on in our heads? Why do we jump on don't do that. Because it's not about that our kids are behaving so badly. I mean, yes, don't let your kids throw rocks at each other. I mean, that's just common sense, right? They're going to hurt each other, right? Let's not go into that. But what causes us this angst? It's not that my kids are acting up. It's I'm embarrassed. And what's that? That's my pride. I have to ask myself, why am I so mad? I need to understand what's really going on in my heart in those moments. People with understanding can control their anger. Hot-tempered people create foolishness. So each one of my kids experienced this in my life. It happened in the grocery store. You know, when they were little, you're pushing the cart and they're wanting this or wanting that, or they're throwing some tantrum. And so the threat comes. Okay, you keep this up, I'm leaving the cart and we're going out to the van. Right? Well, parents, you need to follow through on that. So every one of my kids pushing along the cart, they're throwing a tantrum. Okay, kid comes out. I would leave the full cart, whatever's going on, out to the car. But ultimately, what's going on through my head? What they were doing, or I didn't want to be known as one of those parents who had one of these crazy kids. I love the wisdom here. Pride leads to disgrace, but humility comes wisdom. If all I do is discipline because of my pride, what's that going to teach my kids? Just make sure you act well out in public. What kind of pride is that? Now, you need to discipline your kids in the grocery store. Don't get me wrong. We don't want to have kids like that. But what I'm saying is, what's the motivation behind it? Okay, next question here. Do I avoid hard conversations? Here's where I'm going with that. Because of my pride, am I willing to speak what's true? Jesus had a hard conversation with the Pharisees. He wasn't sitting in that dinner party saying, oh, I better make sure I say the right things. I want to be liked here. I don't want to get moved down the table. I'm up here in the place of honor. If I say this, they're gonna move me to the back. Proverbs 27, wounds from a sincere friend are better than many kisses from an enemy. And we understand this. We get it. We can read it. We can understand it. But do we live by it? Do we protect our own image and our own just this deep need to be liked and accepted that we never share anything hard with the people we care about? And I'm not saying we blast them, because far too often Christians can blast. The Bible is full of how we do this. Speak truth in a loving, gentle way, right? The Bible's clear on that. But so often we don't speak truth because of our pride. We want to be liked. We want to be accepted. We don't want to be rejected. We don't want to get put at the end of the table. We don't want to sit at the kids' table next Thanksgiving, do we? That's why we don't say anything. Once again, I'm asking you questions that I'm wrestling with, because this really gets at the pride issue. Last question is this. Do I constantly care about being on the winning team? And I'm not talking about sports, because I would have given up on the Vikings a long time ago if that was the case. I'm talking about our hearts here. Once again, I think I'm just going to use this, and maybe it's not you, but I'm just going to use this because I think it's at our heart. I'm talking about, for instance, where's your heart after an election? Where do you go with that? Are you up and down because of that? Because your team lost? Or where are you at with how your company is doing, your school doing, your church, the car you drive? It sounds small, but it isn't. We live in America, and in America, we choose teams about everything. Everything, we're on a team. And if my team's winning, look at me. My team won. I'm the greatest. But if our team loses, what do? We bash the other side. We bash the other team so I feel better about myself. Check our hearts on this. And just so you know, happens to me. Do I feel better about myself in the church when attendance is up or when attendance is down? Why? Do I feel better about myself if 100 or 200 more people would come to church on a Sunday morning? Because I would feel bad about that, because those people all need to hear the word of God. Is that really the motivation? Or do I want to see more and more people come because it makes me feel better about myself, or makes us feel better about our church? Check ourselves here. Because if I don't have all this stuff happening or growing, I may have to sit at the back of the table. I may have nothing to share at a Wooddale pastor's gathering. Bible is clear, Romans 12:3, because of the privilege and authority God has given me, I give each of you this warning. Don't think you are better than you really are. Be honest in your evaluation of yourselves, measuring yourselves by what? How should we measure ourselves? By the faith, our faith in Jesus that God has given us. As I close, let's get back to the text. The entire context of this story, dinner party, and God is the host. He's invited you. He's invited you to sit at the table. Put yourself. When you get invited to the table, did you put yourself on the invitation list? Second thing is, in this Jesus' teaching here, God alone assigns the honor. God alone gives the gifts. Why? So that you can live out your calling to make a difference in the world for him. God does what? He humbles the exalted, and he exalts the humble. It's his work. Can we place ourselves on this dinner party table? Can we place ourselves anywhere based upon anything that we have done? So just think for a moment about who Jesus, remember Jesus was just invited so they could trap him. These weren't his friends. Think about who were Jesus' friends. It wasn't the elite of the world. He wasn't hanging out with the movie stars, the singers, the pro football players. He wasn't hanging out with any of them. He didn't name drop. What's he going to say? Hey, come to my party. I got Matthew here. He's a tax collector. Come join me. He's not, you know what I mean? That's not what he did. Let me close with this. Verse 12, then he turned to his host. When you put on a luncheon or a banquet, don't invite your friends and brothers and relatives and rich neighbors, for they will invite you back, and that will be your only reward. Instead, invite the poor, the crippled, and the lame, and the blind. Then at the resurrection of the righteous, God will reward you for inviting those who could not repay you. God, we give you ourselves here. The only thing I can do, Jesus, is say, here's my heart. I've known about the pride for a long time, and I can't fix it. So Jesus, you do your work. Jesus, you have your way in my heart, in the lives of all here, in the life of Woodcrest, that we could truly move into an authentic relationship with you and with one another.